Welcome to all of my pen people out there. In my ongoing effort to better standardize and make accessible my pen reviews, I'm going to introduce a standardized rating system to each pen I review. So the rating scale is going to be on a 1 to 5 point scale for 4 different components. Those components being aesthetics, feel, nib, or mech, depending on fountain pen or mechanical pen. And then finally, Z factor. The first one, aesthetics. Looks. As they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe you like a zirconium Damascus pattern. Maybe you think it's tacky. Maybe you want that classic aesthetic, or maybe you think that's just kind of plain Jane and ugly. So there's many different facets to looks, but in the end of the day, I'm kind of going off of my own eye. That said, I tend to lean toward a little bit more ornate, as it were, and I like cool details on pieces. So those are all going to affect the aesthetics rating for me. Next up, feel, balance, handling. How does a pen actually work in your hand? Does it fit well? Does the operation work well for the mech? When you actually hold it, does it index well? Does it work nicely? Can you fidget? So I'm a big fidgeter. So if I can fidget with a pen, if it's exceptionally well balanced, that is going to increase the points on the feel for me. Next up, I decided to kind of separate the nib, which is the writing experience. So I made the nib its own thing to talk about. And in accordance, for machined pens, I made the mech its own thing to talk about, because that's what you're really looking at when you look at a machined pen, is you're looking at the uniqueness and usability of the individual mech that it operates with. Next up is the Z factor, and that's the thing that brings any pen kind of above and beyond. It might not be related to the nib, mech, feel, aesthetics, things like that, or maybe it takes those things to an extra amazing level, and because of that, it gets a Z factor rating. For example, the Homo sapiens. This is made from like a lava resin from a local volcano. That's wicked cool, and that would get a point or 2 for the Z factor rating right there. The fact that it's got a really springy clip, that's an extra thing there. This hook safe lock, those might all be in the Z factor because it's just above and beyond, and you can't always compare it to another pen, but I want to accurately represent that. Another thing, the intricacy of the milling or the anodization, right? Different metals or different alloys, right? Damascus, things like a forced patina, right? All of those things are not just your standard thing and would bring it above and beyond. Then you've got your cool things, right? Like your gadgets. There's a built-in laser or a built-in flashlight, right? That's going to be Z-factor stuff. The rarity of a piece. You can't get these anymore, especially with these add-ons here, ever. Oh my God. So the rarity factor could be something that I include in the Z-factor. Here's a Mythic pen, but it was using vintage resins from the 1920s and 30s. So this is a brand newly made vintage pen. How sweet is that? So that's a Z factor thing, right? And then finally, on a pen like a vanishing point that kind of straddles those lines, right? It's got a mech. So, but in this case, it's a fountain pen, so I would rate it on the nib. So in a case like this, I would include the factor that it has a mech up here as a Z factor component. The last thing I want to say is cost. I'm not going to include cost in the actual rating scale because I'm going to include that separately, right? And I'm just basically going to do that with dollar signs. So if something is $300, it's going to be $3 signs. So in that sense, I'm still going to include the cost, but it's not actually going to be a determining factor in the outcome of the actual rating. Well, that was really crazy and convoluted, guys. Thank you for joining me on that journey. But I do hope that once you see it in action, this new rating scale will help simplify a lot of understanding and my thoughts on a pen, and I will myself be better able to compare one pen in my collection versus another pen in my collection versus more than the pros and cons, right? I'll actually have a numerical value that is then attributed to that pen. So the inner, science geek in me is all over that. So, all right, thank you very much for joining. I hope that you have yourself a wonderful day and look forward to my first review that's going to be using this scale, and that is upcoming on the Ridge carbon fiber pen here. And then after that, we've got a Lamy Aeon, I think it's called, however you pronounce that. So those are my next two reviews to look out for. As always, may your own journey lead to your own personal serenity.